Welcome back, Irish fans. Breaking Out Brey's Voice podcast. Notre Dame is going to keep dancing. Heck of a win against a really solid Alabama team who can really give you problems and did give Notre Dame problems for a while. Ton of athleticism on the floor, a pace that Notre Dame didn't really want to play with, and a ton of talented guards, and Notre Dame still found a way to win. And that's what matters in March, survive and advance. And Notre Dame did that today. Unfortunately, they didn't get to do it against Javon Quinterly. Hate that injury for him. He's gone through a lot in his career, and he's become one of the better point guards in the country, but it was certainly harder for Bama without him. But Notre Dame made it really hard on them, regardless of if Quinterly was on the floor or not. I was wondering which Alabama team we would get today. We certainly didn't get the one that beat Gonzaga in Seattle. We also didn't get the one that lost to Missouri and Georgia. This is kind of a mix between those two teams, and Notre Dame really took advantage of Alabama's deficiencies, and they came out ready to play, which I think was the biggest thing today. They had maybe even too much energy early, turned it over a little bit, but this team rose to the occasion. I kind of thought all year that this team was built for the tournament just because of all the scores they had. I actually wrote an article about why they're kind of built for March, built for the tournament, and got some flack for that. But today confirmed it. They rose to the occasion. They got confident guys filling the roster, got all guys who can get their own shot. Cormac Ryan was probably their fifth or sixth scoring option for a lot of the year and stepped up with a career day for 29 points. 10 of 13 from the field, 7 of 9 from three. Blake Wesley didn't really have his shot today and still had 16 points. Paul Atkinson was the safety blanket they've needed him to be all year. Prentiss Hubb didn't have it today, but other guys stepped up and took the load. Same with Dane Goodwin, and that's the great part about this team. They don't rely on one or two guys to get them wins, and they haven't all year. And today was an example of the depth they have in terms of their backcourt, the talent they have, and all the ability off the bounce they have, all the confidence they have in themselves. And that's got them far, and it's going to get them far. If they play with this kind of fire and this kind of edge that they played with today, there's not a whole lot of teams that can beat them in the country. And Blake Wesley was an example of that. Cormac Ryan was an example of that. And that's what I loved when they recruited these guys. This team in general, I loved that they just recruited guys with an edge about them. And maybe they didn't see that in themselves when they came out of high school. I know Cormac and Blake certainly did, but they had it in them, and it came out today, all of them. Heck of a performance by Notre Dame. Frankly, they were just better on both ends throughout the second half. Obviously, Quinterly being out was a big factor in that, but certainly something to be proud of if you're Notre Dame. Just pretty much they played at the pace they wanted to. They were better offensively than Bama in the second half. The defense wasn't great in the first half. It wasn't awesome in the Rutgers game either, but the second half, the intensity was awesome. They got Bama out of transition, and a lot of that was them just scoring and being able to set up in their defense, but really gave Bama fits in the half-court offense and didn't allow them to get into what they wanted to get into very often, didn't allow them to get open looks, and forced them to beat them off the bounce. And Bama hasn't really been able to do that without Javon Quinterly, and they weren't able to do it today. But today was the Cormac Ryan and Blake Wesley show. I think I've been higher on Cormac Ryan throughout his entire career than most Notre Dame fans, and that hasn't looked good for me for a while. But today, all the Cormac Ryan truthers, if you'll say, I wouldn't classify myself as that, but all the people who believed in Cormac Ryan, including himself, first and foremost, were really proven right today. I think this was his career high, 29 points. He had that awesome game against Duke last year, and we hadn't really seen quite that level from Cormac this year, but today he was firing on all cylinders, hit 7 threes, was creating for himself off the bounce, just made plays in general. You know you're going to get the defense from Cormac Ryan. You know at this time of the year, even last year at this time of the year, he's going to hit open looks when he gets them. But, man, he really showed off that off the dribble ability today, and that's something that we knew he had in him, but we hadn't seen consistently, even with a guy like Keon Ellis on him, who was all first-team SEC defensively and one of the better defenders in the country on the perimeter. Cormac Ryan made plays on him and found his spots, hit his shots, and, man, he was awesome today. So was Blake Wesley, who didn't have his shot, had 18 points, all off twos, 8 field goals, 2 for 2 from the line, which has been a bit of a struggle for him this year, and just showed how effective he can be even if he's not shooting it well. He did an awesome job late in the game, kind of icing it with that breakaway dunk. Not many players in the country better than Blake Wesley in transition, and he had another one after that. But when Cormac Ryan was kind of shut down by Keon Ellis towards the end of the game after he subbed back in from hitting his head, Blake Wesley really turned it on and kind of brought this game home for Notre Dame, getting to the rim pretty much every time. And this isn't some like mid-major with no size that he's getting to the rim against. I know Bediako was out of the game for a while. I'm going to touch on that. That was huge by Atkinson getting him out of this game. But Blake Wesley getting to the rim against the athletes he did, NBA scouts have to love that. And that's probably the biggest draw with Blake Wesley is just his explosiveness, the athleticism he has. And he's still kind of a work in progress finishing around the rim, but he's shown that his ceiling is really high as a driver, and today had 3 assists as well, was creating for others a little bit. But when Blake Wesley had that look in his eyes late in the game, you knew Notre Dame was probably not losing this game unless Alabama had something crazy up their sleeve. And Blake Wesley turned it on and really brought this one home for Notre Dame. So heck of a performance by Blake Wesley and Cormac Ryan. Atkinson and Laszewski were also really good, 23 points combined. You tell Atkinson was a little antsy early. Bediako's length really kind of messed with him, but Atkinson overall I thought was okay today. Didn't really let Bediako get that much going offensively despite the size, and basically just lived off craftiness and touch in the first half just because of Alabama's size and really all day. The biggest contribution he had obviously was getting Bediako in foul trouble. It's bigger than any of those 11 or 13 points he had, bigger than any of the 6 field goals or 8 rebounds he made or had. Bediako getting fouled out of that game and getting his presence out of the middle of the floor was huge for Notre Dame. And they tried to do it a little bit with Laszewski to get him on the perimeter. Didn't quite work, but just getting him out of that game altogether and forcing Alabama to either go small or go with an injured James Rojas was huge. And shout out to Paul Atkinson for that. That was probably his greatest contribution today. And also just his ability as a safety blanket was huge for Notre Dame today. Bama, I think maybe one of the bigger differences between Bama and Notre Dame, obviously Javon Quinterly is a difference. He's one of the premier point guards in the country. I can't harp on that enough. But the difference between Notre Dame and Bama down the stretch was that Notre Dame had a safety blanket, and Bama didn't really have anybody they could turn to down there. Bediako is a little bit of a work in progress offensively to me. He also is 7 foot, but and has good size, but he's not really a safety blanket like Paul Atkinson is. When you're not going offensively, you're not going offensively, and that's why this Bama team has struggled this year. They haven't had a guy like Paul Atkinson who can really get them out of ruts. And I think Notre Dame last year was kind of like Bama this year, just to a lesser extent. I don't think they were that good, as good as this Bama team, obviously. But it was kind of the same thing where you live and die off the 3 ball a lot of the time, and you don't have a safety blanket to drop it down to. So if you're not shooting well, and you're going to have a really tough time winning games. Paul Atkinson's contributions lately have been awesome. And he's probably been Notre Dame's second best player throughout this tournament. Cormac Ryan has been the number one, obviously, had an awesome game Wednesday and had a great game today. Paul Atkinson had a really awesome game on Wednesday and then a solid one today. What was that? That's 39 points combined between the two and a lot of rebounds as well against some really stiff competition down there. So Atkinson, can't give him enough credit for this one. He wasn't the deciding factor. That was the guards, but he certainly did his part against a guy who did give him some problems and could have given him more problems and could have given Notre Dame more problems if Atkinson didn't do what he did today. Dane Goodwin, I think the bigger story today is Notre Dame found a way to win without Dane Goodwin really contributing. He had that really nice drive, got to the rim. And Dane, when he doesn't score, doesn't give you all that much. I think the matchup was tough for him today. He had Keon Ellis on him for a little bit and then had Miles on him, and I think Gurley was on him for a little bit too. But overall, I think the bigger story, rather than Dane Goodwin wasn't good today, I think the bigger story is that they found a way to win without Dane Goodwin being good. Cormac Ryan stepped up, Blake stepped up, Nate, Paul all stepped up. And they're going to need Dane at some point, I would think, especially once we get deeper into the tournament if Notre Dame gets that far. But against a matchup like this, having guys who can help him out is huge. And I don't think Notre Dame would be at the point they are without guys like Cormac Ryan and Blake Wesley, obviously, Prentiss Hubb, even Trey Wertz, who struggled throughout the year. He stepped up when they needed him to step up at times. And all those guys making plays has really taken a lot of the burden off Dane Goodwin's shoulders. Dane has struggled lately, and Notre Dame hasn't really skipped a beat outside of the Virginia Tech game. So Dane, they're going to need more from. They're going to need to design more plays from him. They haven't been very intentional about getting the ball lately, but it's fine when you have guys like Cormac and Blake putting on a show like they did today and just having that fire that they had today. Same thing with Prentiss Hubb a little bit. The one thing I did like from Prentiss Hubb, even though he had 5 points and shot 1 for 8, 1 for 2, that 3 was awesome early. But the one thing I liked, he didn't have really any turnovers. A lot of guys had turnovers. Atkinson's biggest issue today was 5 turnovers. Like I said, he was really rattled by that length down low. But, man, Atkinson has got to clean that up. He showed flashes of being an awesome passer today, but also had some really bad turnovers and kind of threw the ball away a little bit. 4 steals and 1 block. Kind of evens it out, though. 5 turnovers and then 5 plays where you get the ball back. Evens out, but really can't make that a habit of having Paul Atkinson throw the ball away like he did today. He also had an unbelievable pass to Laszewski, too. But Laszewski was solid today, too, I thought. He's been a really underrated weapon for this team this year. Last year, I thought he was maybe a little overrated early, but this year, he's really played his role almost perfectly. He wasn't awesome defensively tonight. That comes with their guys just being huge. But overall, Nate has just played his tail off defensively throughout the year. He was perfect from the field in the first half. Just such an underrated weapon for this team, and guy who's been really steady offensively, has hit open shots lately, and has been their best down low defender throughout the year. Atkinson has tried to fight down there, but Nate's been the guy who they've really leaned on defensively at times down there. And Notre Dame just found a way today. Javon Quinterly not being there helped, but you got to give Notre Dame their flowers for this one. This is a team that is kind of built for the tournament and showed that today. They controlled the pace a little bit and were frankly just better on both ends of the ball in the second half. Offense flowed really well. Defensive intensity was awesome. Rebounds and turnovers are still a bit of an issue. Let me see how many turnovers they finished with. 18 turnovers. The pace inflates that, I think, a good amount. But when you have 5 less assists than turnovers, that's an issue. And the offense flowed, but also Mike Brey teams typically don't do very well when they have that assisted turnover. When you shoot 62% from 3, though, that cancels it. And it was just good enough today, but the rebounding, I know they out-rebounded Bama, but Bama got a lot of offensive rebounds, 10-5 in that category. When you allow that many offensive rebounds and turnovers, it's going to be tough to consistently advance. But, man, Notre Dame found a way. And whenever one area of this team is lacking, it seems like another picks up, and that's what happened today. And they controlled the pace pretty well in the second half. A lot of that was scoring, like I said earlier, but scoring just to get your defense set up. Notre Dame didn't let the dead legs kind of affect them. They came out with energy, and certainly didn't look like they played less than 48 hours ago across the country like Indiana did yesterday. So awesome performance from Notre Dame, and they were just better on both ends of the ball tonight. And they're going to see Texas Tech on Sunday, and they're going to keep dancing, which is the most important thing. We can say all this about the team. They keep dancing. They survive in advance. If they won this game by 1 point and it was ugly, they're still dancing. And Texas Tech's certainly going to give them some problems defensively, and they looked awesome offensively today, albeit against Montana State. But that's a team with some real talent offensively, and I don't know if their bigs are as good as the bigs Notre Dame has seen so far, but their guards are really good, and that pack line-esque defense is going to kind of shut some of the driving lanes Notre Dame had down today. But, man, Notre Dame is going to play a 3 seed in the round of 32 on Saturday, and kind of just a testament to how far this program has come since Cormac Ryan and since this freshman class got to Notre Dame. And Blake Wesley's a big part of that. Paul Atkinson's a big part of that. And I don't know that anyone can deny that this season has been successful so far, regardless of what happens on Sunday. They accomplished their goal of getting to the tournament. They won more ACC games than I think anyone thought they would, especially early in the year. I predicted them to be like 4th in the ACC, and that seemed high to me at the beginning of the year. They got 2nd. They made the tournament and won a game in the tournament, won 2 games in the tournament if you count the first 4. So certainly a successful year for Notre Dame, and so they kind of put a stamp on it. Heck of a performance, and something they can really build on heading into Sunday. This team seems to have some magic in them, especially Cormac Ryan and Blake Wesley. But it's kind of all I have. Wanted to talk about Texas Tech a little more, but you really don't know what you're going to get from them offensively on Saturday. It's really hard to tell if that was them just being awesome today or if it was because they played Montana State. I'm guessing it's a little bit of both, but if Texas Tech has that offensive performance and then they play their normal defense, Notre Dame's going to have trouble. But, man, Notre Dame, I think, is ready for Texas Tech at this point. If there was a time in the year I wanted to play them, it'd be right now. Notre Dame has been great throughout the year. So thank you guys for watching. Really appreciate the support throughout the year. And, man, I can't wait to cover another March Madness game. It's been a dream to cover March Madness games since I started the podcast and started covering the team. Wasn't sure what ever happened before I went to college, but it's happening now, and let's embrace the ride. Let's keep dancing, and let's see if Notre Dame's got some more magic in them on Sunday. So thank you guys for watching, and I appreciate the support again. Peace.